Hi guys, how are you? How's everyone doing today? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let me just make sure it's up and running. Beautiful. How is everybody today? And welcome. So I'm finally back. I'm very excited to be back after a little hiatus. I'll talk more about that in the coming weeks or months. We can go through that. But for now, I want to just welcome you all and let you know about my new Facebook Live series. So I'm excited. I'm going to be on the same time each week, this time every Wednesday. And for those of you that are new, my name is Naomi Judge and I'm a naturopath, and I help women support their hormones and connect the dots between their health, happiness, and hormones. And in this series, and what I'm going to be focusing on, I'm going to be focusing on the cyclic mood swings. The mood swings that occur due to hormonal shifts. And it's not always down to hormonal shifts. There are other factors involved. Other factors such as your thyroid, your blood sugar, your blood pressure, your liver and gallbladder function, your digestive system, neurotransmitters. So there's a lot involved in this. So I want to go through this because it's not just as simple as balancing your hormones and doing one thing. It's about looking at it holistically and looking at all these different functions in your body and what else is contributing to it. So I'm going to be focusing in particular how the hormones shift, and I want to really focus in over the coming weeks on that hormonal shift between your ovulation and your menstrual cycle, those 2 weeks, because I know they can be particularly hard for some women so much so that they have to take days off work, that they're constantly arguing, or they get agitated and more irritated and angry at their children, have to stay in the home, crying, depression. So there's lots of different factors involved. So I want to focus on that a little bit more over the coming weeks and really pull it apart, because for different women, there are different things going on. So in today's session, what I want to talk about briefly is I just want to talk about a couple of those hormonal shifts. I want to talk about the three main contributors that when you're looking at yourself and you're looking at that cycle, that time in your cycle, it's not just your hormones, there are other factors going on. So I want to talk about the three biggest that you can look at and see if you need to work on those. Then I'm going to talk about a little bit about supporting your neurotransmitters, and then just give you 5 tips to help assist your moods, particularly during that time in your cycle. During that time in your cycle, you may want to stay in, you may want to eat sugar, you may want to drink alcohol, because the way the hormones are kind of working can make you feel overly stressed, overly agitated, overly anxious. And that's when you might actually go to the alcohol. So in terms of the hormone shift, particularly in that part of the cycle, we have what's called the ovulation. And the ovulation is where your egg drops and you get the corpus luteum. Now, during that 2 weeks, what's meant to happen is that corpus luteum should produce your estrogen and your progesterone, and your body should respond to that in a slight way, but not too much of a overwhelming way. But for some women who are struggling, endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, PMS, PMDD, they're more sensitive to these hormonal shifts. Some women are extremely sensitive to estrogen excess and low progesterone, and that's a biggie that I will be talking about a little bit more, and I have talked about before in my previous lives. Some women are sensitive to that. Others are very sensitive to just the shift themselves, and other women are actually sensitive to the elevated progesterone, and being exposed to these hormones 2 weeks of the month, they get to feel like it's a never-ending cycle. For those women, they actually feel that relief when the period comes. So there are little hints as to why you might be feeling why you're feeling, why your moods might be the extreme anger, the intensity, the mood swings. And if you've got any questions, ask me along the way, and I will come back to those for you and just give you some answers later on. I'll go through that. So let's talk about the number one. Number one is blood sugar balance. Blood sugar balance is huge, and hormones affect blood sugar balance so drastically. And if your blood sugar balance isn't already balanced, that's going to have a knock-on effect, and you're going to really feel it. So we've got blood sugar balance, which includes hyperglycemia. This is high levels of insulin, high levels of glucose in the body. Then we've got hypoglycemia, that's where the blood glucose drops. And then we've also got insulin resistance. So your body is producing the insulin, but it's kind of just not reacting to it. So it's not doing its job. There's quite a lot of things here. And then we've got hyperinsulinemia. This is extremely common, and this is where the insulin gets higher and higher and higher over time, and you get knock-on symptoms. That high insulin in the body causes more testosterone, more estrogen dominance. It causes resistant weight loss, inability to lose weight, keratosis pilaris, skin tags, all sorts of symptoms. So these are what can go on. Now we know that hormones impact our blood sugar. We can just look at what happens to pregnant women in their first trimester. Blood sugar can be all over the place. And we also know in studies that particularly progesterone can cause what's called hypoglycemia. So that's low blood sugar. Hypoglycemia particularly can happen after eating, and this can be a big problem. You eat food and the progesterone can trigger hypoglycemia after that food. So your blood sugar drops after that food, causing moodiness, agitation, fatigue. And what's interesting about hypoglycemia, and I think this is why it's important for us to actually focus on this, is the symptoms can actually mimic depression. So the low blood sugar can feel like depression, but it's not really depression. So if you suffer from extreme fatigue, depression, mood swings, food or sugar cravings, nausea as well, or dizziness in that luteal phase, which is at 2 weeks, just after your ovulation and before your cycle. If it's really extreme fatigue, there is a possibility that you are suffering from hypoglycemia. And this is particularly common in women who have PMDD. Now I'm going to talk about PMDD and PMS a little bit more in later lives over the coming weeks, because I want to talk about how we can separate those and the difference between just your premenstrual syndrome and the PMDD, which is a dysphoria, which is a severe depressive syndrome. So I want to actually kind of nut that out for you and let you know what to look out for. But to know that in this time in your cycle, those of you that have very low progesterone, you may also, that will cause your blood sugar to be out. Those of you that are sensitive, or you've been exposed to lots of progesterone. So when would you have been exposed to lots of progesterone? Maybe on the Implanon, maybe on a progesterone pill, maybe pregnant multiple times. This over time and this overexposure to the hormones can then cause this kind of knock-on effect of hypoglycemia, and then you get these symptoms. So then when your hormones start to ramp up, during that luteal phase in your cycle, you get these symptoms. But I want you to remember that the hypoglycemia can mimic depression. So there are things you can do definitely to check that out. You can get your blood sugar checked, you can get your fasting, you can get your insulin checked just to see what the levels are, but you can also check it yourself. You can get the little blood sugar checker from the pharmacy, and you can take the blood spot yourself. Now that will give you a good indication of actually what your blood sugar is doing and fluctuating, because if you suffer from hypoglycemia due to reactive, that's when you eat food, your fasting blood sugar in the morning will probably be okay. And what I've found from most people's blood results is their fasting is just fine, but it's the regulation through the day, the regulation through the week and through the month and through the cycle. So you really need to look at that regulation. So that's why it's important to keep your diet blood sugar balancing during that time in your cycle, and also taking nutrients, maybe chromium, 200 micromilligrams of chromium after eating with your food those days. Also looking at cinnamon, also looking at vanilla. They're both beautiful at balancing blood sugar. And also magnesium, so looking at Epsom salt baths, magnesium spray, or actually taking more magnesium during that time. So that's blood sugar. That's a biggie. That's a huge one that we don't talk about. That comes and goes. It can be fine for a few weeks, and then bam, it will hit you in that luteal phase. And it's particularly common after eating. You get that nausea, dizziness, and fatigue. Okay. Number 2. This one is huge, and in all of the work I've done with hormones, I've seen the connection. I've seen what's gone on between hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and serotonin. So low serotonin is huge. If your serotonin is low, by the time you come to your luteal phase, you're not going to have any backup. You're not going to have any resources. You're not going to have anything to give you that help that you need while your hormones are fluctuating. Because as the hormones fluctuate, we kind of need backup systems. We need serotonin to be working, dopamine to be working. We need our thyroid to be working, our blood sugar to be balancing, just to support us through that phase, particularly if there's a lot of stress going on, we've got a lot of anxiety in our life, or we're busy, or we're not sleeping, we need to have backup systems. And if your serotonin is low and you go through that luteal phase, particularly estrogen dominant, that's going to exacerbate that, and that's actually going to further cause your excitatory neurotransmitters like glutamate to rise. Serotonin will lower, and then that leads to insomnia, that leads to anxiety, agitation, ruminating thoughts. Now, signs of low serotonin can be mental obsessions, compulsive behaviors, depressed mood, also being depressed in winter. That's a biggie as well. Sleep cycle disturbances, so waking through the night, not being able to sleep at night. Sleeping too long in the morning is a big one. If you sleep too long in the morning or keep hitting snooze, that actually suppresses your serotonin as well. Low libido is a big one. Cravings for sweet foods. Just feeling a sense of overwhelm, but at the same time, just not feeling the joy in things. And so this is a big one I find from my ladies who say, as soon as the ovulation hits, after ovulation, the joy goes, the things they love go, they stop loving the people that are important to them. Bam, as soon as their period comes, they get that lovey-dovey feeling back. The change can be so dramatic, and serotonin can influence it hugely. If we look at how the hormones work during the luteal phase and during that part of your cycle, progesterone can potentiate serotonin. So progesterone can cause more serotonin. Estrogen is more of a regulator, but too much high estrogen can cause too much high excitatory neurotransmitters. So you'll get more anxiety, you'll get more insomnia, you'll get more anger. But if your progesterone is low, or you're not ovulating properly, which a lot of women don't actually ovulate, they still go through their cycle, but they don't ovulate. And if you're not ovulating, you're not getting the progesterone. And if you're not getting the progesterone, then you're not getting enough serotonin. So that's the anxiety, the anger, the mood swings, those kind of things. Not so much the depression, it's more the mood swings with the low serotonin. If you've got too little estrogen as well, so maybe you're more testosterone dominant, or this can be women going through menopause. If you've got too little estrogen, we know that estrogen balances serotonin. So progesterone helps to ramp it up, estrogen more balances it. You know, low estrogen signs and symptoms can be needing to pee a lot, bad memory, feeling foggy, and also not getting that egg white discharge. So the egg white discharge at ovulation can mean a strong ovulation. No egg white discharge can mean no ovulation and no hormones. Multiple days of egg white discharge can mean actually too much estrogen and not enough progesterone. So that's what can be going on with you there. And that can give you little tips about what your hormones are actually doing. And then if you've got low progesterone because you're not ovulating, or the ovulation's not strong enough, or you're overly stressed, or the pathways, your hormone pathways are not working, then your serotonin will be a little bit lower, and you might get depression. You might get sore, painful breasts. You might get lumpy breasts. You might get extreme fatigue as well with that. So that's the low serotonin. That's a big one to look out for. And there are things you can do for that. I'm going to talk a little bit more later what you can do to help your neurotransmitters, what you can do to boost that serotonin in particular, because particularly in that time in your cycle, we do things that actually deplete it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Okay, so number 3, your thyroid. This is one of the biggest, this is huge. I've said that about all of them, but these are the big guns. These are the big guns that will cause that luteal phase to be really all over the place. Your thyroid balance is huge, and the common thing about your thyroid hormones is they fluctuate. They fluctuate from day to day, week to week, cycle to cycle within your cycle. And it can be very common for your thyroid to fluctuate an awful lot in that luteal phase. Some signs of low thyroid, these are some of the common signs. So we've got depression, and actually depression that doesn't respond well to antidepressants. That's a huge sign of low thyroid, your thyroid being underactive. It's called hypothyroidism, or subclinical hypothyroidism, which sometimes the bloods come back okay, but you're still getting signs and symptoms. That still means if you're getting signs and symptoms, that means the thyroid is not functioning correctly. Heavy painful periods, periods, high cholesterol, fatigue, sort of maybe feeling pale, hair loss, brittle nails, nails that break. Constipation is a big one. Difficulty losing weight. It's hard if the thyroid is not working. It's almost impossible to lose weight. You won't be able to lose weight, and in fact, you're eating salad all the time, and you still won't lose weight. Sometimes kind of sunken eyes. Leptin will be out as well. So leptin regulates your snacking. So you might feel the need to snack an awful lot. Some women get a hoarse voice if their thyroid gets affected locally here. Puffy eyes, that's one I get when my thyroid goes out. Muscle cramps, cramping muscles an awful lot. Poor memory. Change in hair. So the hair, this happened to me actually, I can't remember, February. So my thyroid just popped, the TSH popped up a little bit. I've talked about this, but what I noticed was not so much coarse, but it was getting a bit knotty. And hearing loss. Hearing loss is a big one. And the biggest that I hear all the time is the cold hands and feet. So the cold hands and feet, and even pain on the soles of the feet sometimes can mean the thyroid's a little bit out. But there's a few of those signs there that can come with other things. But, you know, if you get a few of them together, particularly it being cold and not being able to lose weight, that can be a big thyroid one. So what's interesting is we know the thyroid helps to regulate serotonin. And we know that progesterone helps to regulate the thyroid. So if you're having any issues with progesterone being produced during that particular time in your cycle and serotonin is dropping, then most likely your thyroid is dropping out as well. And what's interesting is there was a study done, it was 1986, there was a study done, women that were suffering with extreme PMS. And when they were treated with thyroxine, which is T4. So you have two thyroid hormones. You've got the T3 and the T4. T4 is normally medicated, it's thyroxine, and that turns into the active T3. But these women that were medicated with the thyroid hormone had complete relief from their PMS symptoms. So I want you to understand there is a huge connection here, and without going deeper, you'll never really be able to get to the bottom of what's happening to you in those 2 weeks, those mood shifts, whether it's depression or anxiety. With thyroid, you can also get a mix of both. You can get more sort of bipolar kind of symptoms as well. You can go from depression and that can turn into more of an anxiety kind of bipolar. And you might find this through your cycle. So if you're one of those women that really go introverted and depressed during the luteal phase, and then suddenly part of your cycle you're so hyperactive, that might be your thyroid fluctuating as well. So looking at your thyroid is important. So I've talked about looking at your blood sugar and measuring it yourself. The thyroid is about getting the right blood tests, and you know, you may have to push your GP. It's well worth doing. You can do it through your naturopath, you can do it through a holistic practitioner, but you need to know what your thyroid is doing. And just the TSH, and I'm going to bang on about that, the thyroid stimulating hormone is produced from your pituitary, and the feedback mechanism just isn't the only thing we need to look at. So normally the GPs will only test your thyroid hormones once your TSH from your pituitary is over a certain number. But sometimes this can be okay, but these are not. And that does happen. We don't rely on just the feedback. So you need to get your thyroid checked. Getting your iodine checked via urine is also a good idea, because normally a lot of these symptoms will be low iodine, the cold hands and feet, even nodules on the thyroid, a goiter, nodules on the breast, painful lumps in the breast. That can be low iodine as well. So you can get iodine in your diet, dulse flakes, kelp, seaweed, iodized salt, but I would get it checked and just see if you do need to supplement, because iodine can be a game changer. If you're feeling extremely depressed, low iodine can really help, but we don't want too much iodine. Too much iodine taken in the wrong way can cause some heart palpitations, and for me, if I take iodine without salt, I get a bit of shoulder pain as well, because iodine needs that sodium to kind of support the thyroid as well. So there's a whole kind of intricate thing going on there that you just need to understand. So those are the three big ones. Blood sugar. If your blood sugar is all over the place, you're not going to feel great in your luteal phase. If you've already got low serotonin, it's only going to get worse in the luteal phase, and you're going to feel very depressed, maybe anxious, maybe even suicidal. Some women with PMDD do feel suicidal, and there are some studies that suggest women with low progesterone are more likely to self-harm and also have more suicidal thoughts. So this is big. So blood sugar, low serotonin, and your thyroid, those are the three things. If you suffer from these symptoms intensely, you need to understand, you need to get on top of, and you need to investigate, get the tests, get the results, and start supporting those. So in terms of your neurotransmitters, I just want to guide you through a couple of easy things you can do, particularly in that time in your cycle, you know, in the luteal phase, from your ovulation to your period. Exercise is the best thing you can do. 40 minutes a day, whether that's walking, cycling, running, yoga, whatever it is. I mean, being outside is best. It is best being outside, but you may not feel like exercise, but you've got to get that exercise in. Cold therapy is wonderful for your neurotransmitters. So that's a cold shower, jumping in a cold swimming pool, jumping in a cold ocean, those kind of things. A cold shower is you don't have to go as far as buying an ice bath or filling your bath with ice. Just have a nice cold shower. That's enough for your serotonin. You can have it at the end. Just start doing it. It's uncomfortable at first, but you'll notice that improvement. New experiences. So new experiences are a big one. Going to a new restaurant and eating something with a new flavor, that's great for your serotonin. That's actually very good for dopamine as well. But a new experience helps to sort of rewire the brain and support your neurotransmitters. So that's fantastic. Vitamin D and sunshine are huge. So get out in the sun or take some vitamin D or get a sunlight box if you're in a country with no vitamin D or hardly any sunlight. It's really important. And the number one I find that I tell clients to do, and I've had many clients come to me as a last resort before they go on antidepressants, and we do visualization and affirmations. And in 2 weeks, it's game changing, absolutely game changing for them. So the visualization might be visualizing yourself, the opposite of what you are. So you visualize yourself happy, doing what you want to do, seeing yourself and really seeing yourself feeling calm or happy or joyful, motivation, either working, either outside gardening or running. See yourself and feel that, and then have an affirmation. But the visualizations are the biggest. The visualizations kind of tell your brain this is true, this is what's happening. And that is often enough to raise that serotonin. So I would start with the visualizations. They're huge. And just really, you just visualize what you want, visualize what you see for yourself, and the opposite, because you'll be dreading that time of the month, particularly if you have these severe mood swings. So use a visualization as something to just kind of hone in to how you want to feel and be during that period of the month. And remember, things do deplete neurotransmitters. So this is really important. Alcohol is a huge depleter of serotonin. It's huge. So are drugs as well, so recreational drugs. And what's interesting is the luteal phase is the time that women want to do things because it takes their mind off how they're feeling. So they're more depressed, they're more angry, they're more agitated. Maybe you'll go for the wine, maybe you'll go out and party, those kind of things. This is the time to not do that because you're depleting your serotonin more. So no alcohol. And I'm sorry, but also social media and the television. So obviously watching something that you love and having these things on, but not mindlessly watching or binge watching time and time again. Now, the argument is I get from my clients all the time when I mention that, is that the TV is a time for them to relax and chill down. But it does over time reduce your serotonin. So maybe watch one of your programs and then read a book and do something like that. But it does, unfortunately. And then also low vitamin D, so that depletes. So if your vitamin D is low, you will find that will deplete your serotonin. In terms of supplements aren't something that you can just take willy-nilly, particularly if you're on medication, because you can react. So there are supplements that you can buy, but they can have the opposite effect for some people. So the supplements that I use for my clients might be SAMe, which I love because that's a sulfur-based mineral that actually helps with detoxification and raising serotonin levels. So I might use that in the luteal phase. Tryptophan, tyrosine, St. John's wort works like an SSRI, so it works very well. Magnesium and acetyl-L-carnitine I love. Acetyl-L-carnitine is fabulous when you've got very low moods but no energy. You've got no va-va-voom, no get up and go. So all these are wonderful. I'd say acetyl-L-carnitine, magnesium, tyrosine are kind of the safest. But the others you have to be careful because if you've already got too much serotonin, which some women do have, and then you take these supplements, it can cause a bit of anxiety. So you need to be really aware of what you're taking. You also need to take good quality. You should not take these when you're on another antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication. You just need to be careful and monitor, but they're probably best taken with a practitioner. Okay, so that's everything I wanted to talk about, and then I just wanted to kind of sum it up really, and just say what I see as the most important. So particularly during that phase, so during your period when you have a bleed, that's a good time to rest out. So that's a good time to go inwards and rest. But day 14 to day 28 or day 14 to day 21, it depends how long your period lasts for. You want to kind of have things set out to do that are going to help your thyroid, help your blood sugar, help your serotonin, and that will support your hormones as well. So you want to make sure from day 14 that you're exercising daily, light exercise daily. So a walk daily is fantastic. Castor oil packs, amazing, wonderful. You put them over your gallbladder liver area. You just go before bed, you do half an hour, the heat pack on top, the castor oil. It's a beautiful way to relax, support the nervous system, but also it helps to detox any excess hormones. Now, a caveat with the castor oil pack, you don't want to do it too close to your period. So day 14 to maybe day 21 is a good time to do it, or just that kind of like week, day 14, you know, and that just that week after is a good time to do it. Sunshine is fantastic, so definitely getting your sunshine during that phase in your cycle. You can use a light box or red light therapy if you like as well, or if you just can't get the sunshine, you could take a little bit of vitamin D, but getting out in the sunshine is the best that you can do. And then support your liver and gallbladder, because what happens during this phase is if your hormones are ramping up and you're getting high hormones, your body's kind of getting saturated with the hormones and it's getting hard to excrete. So you want to make sure you're supporting your liver, dandelion tea, green tea, St. Mary's thistle, just something to give the liver a little bit more of a va-va-voom, a little bit of more of a push, so it can get the hormones out of your body nicely instead of them storing up. And that's the same with your bowel. You know, if you get constipated during this time, which is common because if your progesterone is too high or too low, or your thyroid or your serotonin, all of those things cause constipation. So if you get constipation, that means you're going to be more likely to suffer symptoms because you're not getting rid of these excess hormones. So find something that works for you for constipation. So that could be taking 60 mils of aloe vera juice before bed and in the morning. That could be soaking flax seeds and having them the night before. It could be taking some magnesium oxide the night before. It could be putting psyllium husk in some baking goods that you take, having them the night before. Apple cider vinegar, or anything bitter. So try and figure out what works for you if you get constipated. Normally taking something the night before is helpful, and then just make sure you're in a good routine of going to the bathroom, using a squatty potty, or I use a stool. I didn't buy a squatty potty. I've just got one of those little kids stools. It was $5 from Kmart. Just use one of those. Your knees need to be above your sort of pelvis area, and just sit there. But try and find something if you do get constipated that will help you to go. You can also use herbs like cascara, which are very good. And that will help as well. And then, of course, those are my 5 tips, and the 2 things to omit would be sugar and alcohol during that time, because those are the 2 things that are going to put your blood sugar out and deplete your serotonin. So there we go. That's it for today. They're the 3 big reasons why you might feel this intense overwhelm, this intense mood shift, depression, anxiety, and just 5 tips and how you can support it. So we've talked about balancing your blood sugar, we've talked about low serotonin, and we've talked about your thyroid and how these are implicated. And just let me know if you've got any questions or anything you'd like me to cover on this topic. I think it's a biggie, and I'm looking forward to getting into this. So have a beautiful day, and I will talk to you all soon and see you next week. Bye.